Today, we're looking at a brown ink by Atramentis, William Shakespeare, or dark brown. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, there's timestamps down below so that if you're in a hurry, you can skip around, but if you got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. You can also follow me over on Instagram, and if you're new here, I would invite you to subscribe. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this cross Bailey with a medium nib. I wrote with it for a day and then used it to take the notes for this video. In order to have some standardization, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper in the first writing samples, although there is an additional writing sample with different papers later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very light peppering of darker letters throughout, 9 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both aren't showing us much color variation at all, although we do get some in the extra fine. Tomoe River. With no bleeding, normal Tomoe River ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. Extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 13 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show no color variation because there is none. And Rhodia with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have a very nice peppering of shading throughout with 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 15 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby of the extra fine is showing us some color variation. The medium shows us none, and that's what it looks like in the writing. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. Now you'll see other old dots at the top because that kind of purple, I don't know where that came from, but that is not a part of this ink. I think that I put this down on a surface and there was dots of another ink there, and then that sort of just got right there. So that's not a part of this ink. What we see is a gray at the bottom that is pushing its way up rather evenly until we get to that red that's up at the top, which is interesting because that's a red and this is a dark brown ink, but there's neither here nor there at this point. That's what we're getting. The one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. Now that gray is very much staying in place on the bottom, really forming a line. A little bit of it's moving, and the red that's up at the top, apparently the gray is moving up through there because the red we're seeing at the top is darker than the red that we were getting in the first chromatography. Just a little bit darker, but it does mean we expect some resistance here. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page and how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this in a note-taking situation if I had to go back and highlight because that lowercase h, blown out, unreadable, losing your important notes. No, ew, don't do it. Water is lifting all the red tones, not the gray tones. The gray is very much there, and I experience the same problem cleaning my pen. Now, pen flush appears to just begin the breakdown process. On the far right side of where you see the gray, you do see it start to lighten up. Pen flush is what I had to use to get it completely out of my pen. 1/3 bleach solution that I did not have to use does completely remove it from the page, but it also discolors the paper just a little bit. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with the realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. I'm also linking a video that shows how I do my testing and my calculations. The Atramentis dark brown has a viscosity of 2.37, making it normal. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples done on Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper. I average those, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. The Atramentis dark brown has an average dry time of 13 seconds, putting it right on the edge, but still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like the Atramentis dark brown, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a nice green and chose Robert Oster's bronze. The second writing sample is done on Life, Apica CD, and Franklin Christoph paper. Here we're looking at Life paper. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a nice light peppering of shading. Some darker letters there, 4 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine far left to far right is showing some color variation, a medium shows none, and that's what we got in the writing. Apica CD notebooks with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is much lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice peppering of shading throughout, a heavier peppering of shading than we've seen in some of the others, because you really do see it in every single word in a couple of spots. So it's very nice there, and 3 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 6 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine does show some color variation, which we got. The medium shows none, and we didn't get it. And Franklin Christoph paper, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. There are a few spots of shading. When you look at the word brown, you look at the word fox, you can see it there. 1 second to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade, 4 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show no color variation, although the extra fine did give us a very nice peppering of color. And that's what I have for writing samples. So what do I think of the Atramentis William Shakespeare, or dark brown? On white papers, it tends to be a little magenta leaning and puts me off a little bit in this tone. But on cream paper, the brown really stands out as especially nice. What nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that drier mediums and drier broads put a little bit of a magenta coming through. It allowed it to have slight bits of shading. I just didn't care for it in its darker version from wetter pens. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.